In this tutorial, we are going to take what we learned in the film strip project and the text tool to create a really cool looking text effect. Now, what you're going to need to start off with is a background picture. And what's going to happen is what you see in this background picture will eventually show through the letters that we type out here. So you want a good, cool picture as your background picture. Now, to start off with, if we come down to the layers panel, you'll notice that my background is locked. I need to go ahead and unlock that. So I'll just double click to be able to unlock it. And once I double click and rename it, I'm going to rename this picture just so I know that this is my picture layer. And I'll go ahead and come back down here to the layers panel, and you'll see that I've renamed it picture and my lock has disappeared. The next thing I need to do is I need to add 2 new layers. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here to the create a new layer icon, and I'll click on the first one, which is layer 1. And I actually want this at the very bottom of the stacking order, and I am going to go ahead and rename it background because that will be my background. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a second new layer, and I want this one at the top of my stacking order, and I'm going to go ahead and type in here text. This will be my text layer. So I have 3 layers: my background, my picture, and my text layer. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to select my text layer. I'm going to make sure I have that layer selected, and I'm going to come over to my toolbox and I am going to grab my type tool. Once you grab your type tool, you're going to want to come up into your tool options bar, and I'm going to recommend that you use the font Impact. You can use other fonts, you can mess around with other fonts, but Impact is a nice thick font which does a great job. But like I said, you can experiment with other fonts. Your font size is going to be dependent upon your picture. I'm actually starting with a font of 260 because I know that is what works for my picture. For you, it'll depend on your individual picture. Once I have all that, I'm just going to go ahead and click down into my picture, and I am going to type with all capital letters Ohio, O-H-I-O, and I'll just grab my move tool and I'll move it out so that O-H-I-O takes up most of my picture from left to right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a clipping mask so that these pictures show up in my letters and everything else disappears. In order to do that, I am going to come down to my layers panel, and I'm actually going to move my picture to the top of the stacking order. I'll go ahead and move it up there. So my picture is now at the top of the stacking order. And I am then going to hold the Alt key on my keyboard just to the left of the space bar. And when I put my mouse between the picture layer and the text layer, it will turn to the Create a Clipping Mask icon. I'll go ahead and just click once, and now if you look out at the picture, you notice that you have the letters with the pictures inside of it, and everything else is transparent. Now if I want to move it around, I can just grab my move tool, and as long as I have the picture layer selected, I can move my picture around to get the best possible result. So it looks the best. I'm just going to go ahead and put it there. Now once we do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to stylize this text layer a little bit just to make it jump off the page. So what I need to do is I need to come down to my layers panel, and I need to make sure that I select my text layer, and with my text layer selected, I'll come down to my add a layer style button, and I'm actually going to add 3 separate things. I'm going to start off with bevel and emboss. So I'll go ahead and click on bevel and emboss, and up will pop the little bevel and emboss dialog box, and as you see, it adds a little bit to the letters. You can mess around with these settings, but we're really pretty good for this picture just on the default settings. Once I've done that, I can just stay right in here in my layer style box. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add stroke, which is an outline. Now in order to add stroke, I'll just go ahead and check on the checkbox. To get into the stroke options, because right now I'm still showing my options for bevel and emboss. To get into the stroke options, I just have to double click right here on the word stroke, and now my stroke options come up. Like I said, I can change my different stroke options. I'm going to go ahead and just have a very small outline. I'm going to go for 2. And I'm actually going to leave my opacity at 100%. You don't have to do that. You can mess around and do whatever you want, but that's what I am going to do. Then the third thing I'm going to add is a drop shadow. So I'll go ahead and check my drop shadow. And to get into my drop shadow options, I'll just have to double click on drop shadow there. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to actually add a little bit more of a size. I'm going to go up to about 10. These settings for you will depend on your picture, and I'm going to change my angle to about 110, I think is what I'm going to put my angle as. And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So at this point, I have a pretty cool looking text effect. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to just do what we did in our film strip project. We're going to go ahead and merge some layers, duplicate some layers, and create a cool reflection effect. So in this case, the 2 layers that I want to go ahead and merge are my text layer and my picture layer. So my text layer is highlighted. I'll hold down Control on my keyboard, click on my picture layer so they're both highlighted. Once I do that, I'll come up to my layer menu, come down to the bottom to where it says Merge Layers. You can also do this by Control E on your keyboard. Once I do that, you'll notice that I have now merged my layers into one single layer called Picture. Now remember, for the reflection effect, I need to go ahead and duplicate that layer. So I'll drag that down to the Create a New Icon layer. Now you see I have Picture and Picture Copy. I'm actually going to rename Picture Copy as Reflection because this is going to be my reflection layer. Once I do that with my reflection layer selected, I'll go up and with my Move tool, I'll just move it down so that it is top to bottom from the OH and the IO. They fit perfectly. And there's a little bit of overlap there, and that's fine. I'm going to kind of just leave that for now. Then I'll go up to my Edit menu, down to Transform, and Flip Vertical. You see it flips over my reflection layer. Once we do that, remember I'll come into my reflection layer, make sure reflection is selected. I'm just going to lower my opacity down to about, in this case, about 50%. Go ahead and come over, grab my Erase tool, and I'll just erase off the bottom part of the OHIO, and we're almost done. Now, the only thing that's missing is a background. You notice we have a transparent background. Well, in order for me to fix that, I'm just going to come down to my Layers panel, make sure that I have the background layer selected. I'll come over and grab my paint bucket. I'm going to have white as my foreground color. You can choose whatever you want, but I'm going with white, and I can just drop white paint out there. And there we go. We have a cool looking OHIO text effect. At this point, if I want to come back down here to my Layers panel and choose my reflection layer, I can go ahead and grab my Move tool, and where this little overlap is between the O's, I'm just going to use my Move tool to kind of nudge myself down a little bit to get it to where I like it. I actually kind of like it just like that. I'm just going to grab my Crop tool, crop out any of the unnecessary space, and there we go, a very cool looking text effect.